today we have with us for the Linux Certification Virtual Summit, Sirko Kemter. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. And how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for being here today with us at the Linux Certification Virtual Summit. So tell me, who is Sirko?
Well, currently I have the geeky number of 42 years on my body, so I'm 42 years old. Well, since more than 20 years I'm working with Linux and free software. Yeah, and for living I work as a training and development manager here in Cambodia.
Oh, perfect. So, how did you get to Cambodia? Are you a Cambodian native, rather?
No, I'm not Cambodian native. I'm German.
Oh, perfect.
And yeah, well, free software brought me to Cambodia. It's a little bit long story. I was once here for an open source and free software event, and did stay around a little bit longer as the people needed my knowledge here. And then I thought, oh, okay, it's a country where you can definitely move something. And then I came back several times, and at a certain point I said, okay, maybe we go for a longer term there and do something for these people.
Perfect. I love it. So, and everything is going to be edited because I heard some feedback from myself. So, give me 1 second. All right. I think we're good to go. Okay. So, how did you get introduced into the world of Linux?
Wow, that's hard to describe. First of all, you have to see I'm East German, so and as all these things started back in the beginning of '90s, it was for us a time where you could discover a lot of things, discover a lot of new things, which you was not used to, and you was more open to try things out as somebody else. And yeah, well, I did work for a while with some other Unixes. So and then at one day I just got a Linux distribution into my hands. It was a SUSE Linux. Yeah, and I tried it and I figured it out. Yeah, it works for me very fine. At this time, it could not do everything you was used to from other more proprietary operating systems, but it did work in most of the things very well. And then later, I migrated completely to Linux. That was start of the 2000s, so back in 1999. 1998. Yeah, and that's it. It's hard to describe after nearly 20 years. Oh, that was the date I was introduced to Linux. That's not possible anymore for me to get it out of my brain.
Perfect. So you're a true Linux veteran, I call that.
Yeah, some people call me that, yeah.
Great. So what made you decide to focus on Linux Essentials by the Linux Professional Institute?
Yeah, well, there's if you look to the content of this exam, you will figure out that there are some things in this exam where I say, hey, that is an important part of the free software or open source movement. And you have to have definitely knowledge about that to survive in this Linux world. You know, you cannot work with Linux very well if you have not a simple little bit knowledge about how the licenses work. and how the software is created. That software is created from different communities, and that they are working in different styles, and that they see some things different. You have to understand, and that's what I say. Okay, that is an important part you should learn as a Linux user to understand, so that you can understand your system. And that is in Linux Essentials and part of the curriculum. So it's for me a good thing.
Since you have over 20 years of experience, I would assume that it was very easily for you to prepare, or did you do anything in particular?
Yeah, for myself, I had nothing to prepare. I'm one of these dinosaurs in this area, and I'm also involved in several open source projects deeply. So I had not that much to prepare, and most of the commands Linux Essentials are essential, and even I don't work a lot with command line or something like that. I know them, so for myself, there was not a lot to prepare. For the people who wants to do it, I just say, okay, don't take it too easy. You have definitely to learn something, and you have to understand something. And to answer 40 questions in 60 minutes is something. So you should prepare a little bit, but it's not too hard for the most of the people, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be some suggestions that you have for folks to prepare that want to take this exam?
Search for a good partner who makes the training with you. The problem I see also as a professional trainer is Linux is today not that hard to install anymore. Yeah. So if you look to Ubuntu or SUSE or Fedora or even Debian, are easy to install for a normal user. So, and people starting using it, but they're using it with little small failures. Yeah. I mean, if I would here ask some of my people here, what is the command to log out on a shell? They would say to me exit. But exit is not the command. The command is logout. You can exit use on a graphical shell. Yeah, that's what they are used to. The problem is the people starting using Linux without the little bit thinking what it really does, and if it is really the right command to do that. So for the most of the people, there must be done a little bit of correction maybe. So do it with a professional partner. Yeah, and that's, I think, the only hint I can give to the people.
Okay, professional partner. Great, great. So are there any particular commands and objectives someone needs to know? I mean, you did mention a command. What was it, the lookup command you stated?
Logout.
Oh, lockout. Okay, perfect. Are there any, say, basic commands someone should make sure they know they have a true understanding of?
Yeah, well, the Linux Essentials really concentrates on the basic things. So you have some things even to things who are not related to Linux, who are general things. You have to understand what a computer is. So what are the parts of a computer? And that is a part. You have a part about licenses. Yeah, and what are free software licenses, and where's the difference between free software and open source? And then you have the a little bit overview. Okay, that's the most common free software, and that's used for this and this purpose. And then you have the basic usage things, and the basic usage things according to the command line or shell. So you have a lot of the basic commands, and a really important part is all the commands like man and the option help and info and all these things, how you can figure out things on your computer, on your Linux system by yourself. So that's what the Linux Essentials basically covers.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. So just like the basic commands like man, help, info. What about ls or cd?
Yeah, you have the basic directory commands: ls, cd, cp, move, mv, and stuff like this. Of course, too. You have really that what a normal user without administration rights needs. There is a little bit. Okay, you have to understand a little bit of restrictions. So how does the user system on a Linux system work? But it's not so deeply that you have to administrate it. It's just, oh, why can I not search in this directory? Oh, I have no reading rights. Yeah, and then I cannot search in that directory. So that kind of things.
Understood. So with the exam, is it multiple choice or is it a hands-on exam?
There are several methods to make this exam. So we here in Cambodia are using yardstick, so that's browser-based system, where the 40 questions come in and the participant has to answer them, and they are mostly multiple choice.
How has being Linux Essentials certified impacted your life?
Yeah, well, to own this certification makes, for me personally, no difference. As I said, I am a dinosaur, and nobody looks for that kind of stuff on my CV anymore. Yeah, but here for in Cambodian, it makes definitely a difference. We are pretty new to Linux, and I have to say the universities here are mostly open to Linux, like the Royal University. They're using Fedora for teaching. NipTict is very open to free software in general, but the problem is the quality of the education is not the highest level. And with an international proven certificate, you can prove for a possible employer, okay, I have really this knowledge. It's not just written on my CV. So for them here, it's important.
Great. So it seems like the importance of Linux in Cambodia is kind of like the importance of Linux around the world, in the sense of everyone, needs to know Linux in the computer world. So.
Well, no, it's, there's a huge difference between Europe and North America and here this part of Asia. in this part of Asia, the computer plays not that vital role as it plays in the Western world.
Gotcha.
Let's say this statistically, each 10th Cambodian owns a computer, but each Cambodian owns 3 smartphones. So mobile computing has here a very higher level as the operating system based computer.
Oh, okay. See, you taught me something new. When you live in the Western world, you just you're only consumed with what's around you. But thanks to you, I now know about, the Cambodia, what about Linux in Cambodia and stuff like that. Thank you. So let me ask you this. For someone like myself who's considering taking the Linux Essential exam, what would be some of the key best advice that you can give me? Like, is there a particular open source that I should look at learning first, like say Fedora or Ubuntu?
Well, it should never rely on the Linux distribution. You should choose. That's a thing I learned in my life. You should choose the Linux distribution for you, which fits to you. I can say I prefer a Fedora, but that is me. That must be not you. So for the Linux Essentials, it doesn't matter which Linux distribution it is. Sooner or later, you will also know, okay, there are the differences between this distribution, and I choose this because of that. That's what you have to learn. It's from that side, on a Linux distribution, you cannot fix that.
Okay. Thank you. So what blogs or online forums do you monitor to keep abreast of what's going on with Linux? I know you did mention that you are part of some open source projects. Can you also elaborate on those?
Yeah, of course. I monitor very, very closely my own project, which is Fedora. So I definitely read the planets. I read the planets of the most distributions. But I have to admit, the usage of RSS feeds and stuff like that for myself is gone back. It's my feed reader still has them, and I still looking over it, but my news I getting in another system today. It's more conversation in IRC, conversation on mail. It's not just this is the non plus ultra RSS feed for me where I get my information from. There are definitely such feeds out there which are very good, which are interesting. To give an RSS feed which you should monitor for your Linux Essentials, I think makes no sense if you look to the things you learn into the Linux or have to learn for the Linux Essentials. You would say, okay, these user ports I'm getting through using the changes. Yeah. For myself, I just looking closer to the projects I work with.
Okay. So you did mention that you're working on a Fedora project. Can you talk a little bit about that, or is that low key?
No, that's not top secret. I have several roles in the Fedora project. So I'm Fedora ambassador. So I'm speaking to the public about Fedora. I'm a Fedora design team member. and have several things to do there. And currently, I'm sitting also in the Fedora Ambassador Steering Committee. Yeah, that's the things I do in Fedora or for Fedora.
Perfect. I'm a big fan of Fedora, by the way, so this is truly exciting to me to be talking to someone who's actually on a Fedora project. So,
That's nice to hear. That's nice to hear. Yeah, we have a lot of friends. Well,
you still there?
yes, I'm still there. I just was drinking something.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold still.
Yeah, what's the weather like out there? And bless you, because I know here in America we're changing into fall, so there's a lot of folks who's getting colds as well.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly cold here. I mean, if I go outside, there are more than 30 degrees. So Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So it's definitely hot outside, but it's raining season, so it rains in the evening, and then it becomes a little bit colder, and yeah. So I fetched last week a cold and had a fight a little bit. To,
Yeah, you did send that to the email. I'm glad to hear though that you're feeling better. All right. So where do you see the world of Linux going in 5 years from now?
wow. Well, I'm not one of this guy who promised next year will be the year of the Linux desktop. Um, I seeing for us as Linux. If I look on it to as a Fedora project member, I seeing that the times becoming more complicated. That's what I see. There are more computer outside, computer in kind of smartphones. The Internet of Things will come up. So that means the platforms where an Linux distribution can run on will be much higher, and that brings a lot of more work for the people who have to do it. So there will be a lot of changes. That's the only thing I can say right now. And I seeing some things, and I seeing that there are some things moving in this direction. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. But what it will be clearly, I cannot say.
I understand. So let me ask your take on experience versus certifications. Some folks think as long as you have Linux experience, you don't need a Linux certification. Some people think the way to obtain Linux experience is to obtain a certification. So what is your take on the two?
Yeah, well, to have something to prove my knowledge is not the baddest thing, and as long as I can afford it, I should do the exam. That's my thing on it. I had long time this same you okay. Nobody asked me for it, so why should I do it? They all accept me that I can do it, so there is no need for me. But in generally, to have something to prove on a paper, it's not the baddest thing. That's I think describes it very well.
Yeah, I understand. I agree with you as well. So you said you are teaching Linux now as well. So what made you want to become a teacher of Linux?
What be- what me wanted to know. The people forced me to become it. That's more how it fits in. I mean, if you look to the Linux or open source or free software movement and communities, they all share something in common. That was the belief in free education. So if you become involved in this movement, you definitely will go to Linux events or open source events and speaking there, giving there your own knowledge to others. And that's what I always did. And people did feel with me very often very good in doing that. And so I did it more and more and more. That's why I can say, okay, people decided I have to become it. It was not, let's say this, it's a very hard business. It's not easy to live from that. It's so you don't say, okay, oh, I want to become a Linux trainer and I can earn my living with that very easily. There are Linux trainers outside who can do that, but they work in spheres I don't work. So it's not that I decided, okay, I have to become that. That's all. Yes.
Okay. So you said it was kind of forced upon you. So by you saying that, I'm assuming that you're a great Linux expert and a great trainer. That's what I gather from all of that.
Well, I have to say, in Europe or North America, I'm counting as a good teacher, but here I have a little bit trouble. I still try to figure out how it works with the typical Southeast Asian to teach them. That's not so easy as we think it is. It's a little bit more complicated. Here I'm still experimenting how I can do that the best way. I have to educate myself here a little bit more. Even I have to become a little bit another person for them. So it's not. It's a process here for me to teach Linux things.
Gotcha. So just a quick question for, say, for your curriculum, are there particular commands that you focus on, advanced Linux commands, or do you solely focus on, say, like your basic Linux commands?
No, it's for the Linux Essentials, as the name says, Linux Essentials are really the essential commands. You have really just the directory commands like cd and ls and move and copy and that are in most of the commands. It's how to log out from a shell, and you learn where the difference is between an internal and an external command, and you learn to locate binaries and stuff like that. That's the thing for the Linux Essentials. It's not too hardcore learning commands and their options, and so from that side, it's not too complicated.
Okay. What about scripting? Is scripting on the exam?
Yes and no. There is. You're actually getting to know that the bash is scriptable, so that you can later on use it through combining commands. You learn definitely also to combine commands, but it goes not that deep that you have to write your own shell scripts. It goes not that deep. It's more you get to know what a shebang is, so that if you open a shell script file, or you can see, oh, that's a shell script, and then you can look at it, okay, it does this, so it does not harm to my system, so I can run it. So this kind of level it will be. It's not, you have not to write here 10 or 20 shell scripts to to pass the exam.
Okay, great. So I think I have a complete understanding of the Linux Professional Institute's version of the Linux Essentials, as it's truly just the basic Linux essentials that you need to know to get started in Linux.
Yeah, I compare it always with a house. If you want to build a house, you don't start with a roof. You start with a basement. You will build a good basement. So, and if you build a good basement with things, okay, I know now man, I know info, I know which and all this stuff, so I can figure out things on my system during using it. And then I can build up my house on this basement. So that's how I see this thing, and that's why I'm preferring to doing this Linux Essentials. Even a lot to say, okay, why should I do this Linux Essentials? I could go directly to LPIC 1. It is simple. You can look if you have the skills to do that, if you make the Linux Essentials.
Great. I really thoroughly enjoyed your example of building a house, with Linux Essentials being essential to, not building the roof first of the house, but building the foundation. I think that's absolutely great, the example you gave. So what advice would you give someone after they obtain the Linux Essentials and they want to go on to get more Linux certifications? Is there a certification that you recommend getting next?
Then I would go, after the Linux Essentials, then I would go to LPIC 1. You have in LPIC 1 a little bit of repetition from the Linux Essentials, which you should do more easier, and then you have some more advanced things for the Linux administration. But looking to that would be my next step, making LPIC 1.
Okay, perfect. So Linux Essentials, then LPIC 1, and then anything else that someone is looking to do, because there's so much Linux certification options. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and I want you to feel better and take care of yourself, and we'll be talking soon, okay?
Yeah, okay. So I will biking then home here in this. It's a little bit strange today. The security guard did run behind me and say, "Ah, sir, today is holiday. It's university is closed." I said, "Yeah, the university is closed, but I can open my office by myself."